Hello, welcome to Computer Security Fundamentals class. So this is our lesson 1. So we are going to go through the chapter objectives briefly. So we are going to be focusing on the threats, identifying the threats to computer networks, the likelihood of an attack. We're going to define some terms, and we are going to talk about the different computer systems and networks that are around us. Okay, how seriously should we take threats to our network security, and so on and so forth. So we are going to start with computing risk. Okay, so first of all, we have the exposure factor. The exposure factor is the percentage of value and asset loss due to an incident. So when an incident occurs due to the attack of a threat, the exposure factor is how much value of that asset that has been attacked, how much of it has been lost. And then we'll have the single loss expectancy. Okay, so it is the cost of a single loss, every loss that was ascertained. What is the cost of this, of each of this loss? And then we have the annual rate of occurrence. So it is the number of losses that has been suffered per year. And then we have the analyzed loss expectancy. So it is the yearly cost due to a risk. Okay, so when a risk has taken place, what is the cost yearly? Okay, so this is calculated by multiplying the single loss expectancy with the annual rate of occurrence. So these are the basic formulas that can be used to calculate computing risk. Okay, so now let's talk about risk and the terms associated with its risk management. So we have mitigation, avoidance, transference, and acceptance. So let's discuss this. What is mitigation? So mitigation is when we can identify, evaluate, and prepare strategies that will help to minimize, monitor, and control threats. And then avoidance is when we eliminate hazards, okay, activities and exposures that can negatively affect an organization's assets. Okay, so avoidance, as the word means rather to avoid something. Okay, and then we have transference is when the burden of the loss of a risk is transferred to another party, either by contract, by insurance, or other means. It could be warranties or guarantees. For example, let's say you bought a fridge and the warranty of that fridge is 2 years, but somewhere along the line, in 6 months, the fridge develops a fault due to a threat. Now that risk is no longer on you, because that fridge has a warranty of 2 years, so the company is going to be liable for either replacing or fixing it. And then we have acceptance. So acceptance happens when a business or an individual acknowledges that the potential loss from a risk is not great enough to warrant spending money to avoid it. Okay, so there are sometimes we need to prevent risk. For example, I mentioned mitigation just now, which has to do with making or creating strategies to minimize and monitor and control threats or risk. Okay, so acceptance is when a business, a company, or an individual acknowledges or accepts that or knows beforehand that the potential loss that could happen should a risk or a threat take place is not great enough, or would not be great enough rather, to warrant spending money to avoid it in the first place. So we move on to the next slide, identifying different types of threats. Okay, so there are different types of threats that exist. Okay, so we have malware, known as malicious software. Okay, combination of malicious software, mal and ware. And then we have security breaches, Okay, so malicious software, they are software that attack our systems with the intent to destroy. Okay, so we have security breaches. These are also types of threats, okay, that break rules and regulations of computer networks or systems. Okay, there are different types of security breaches. Okay, they vary from one type to another. And then we have the DOS, denial of service attacks. So for example, you want to make use of a particular website, and then when you log on to the URL, and then that website will tell you denial of service, meaning you cannot make use of it. And then we have web attacks, session hijacking, DNS poisoning, insider threat. All these are different types of threats that can be countered. Okay, so the different types of malicious software. Okay, so like I mentioned, malware is a software with a malicious purpose, meaning it has an intent to destroy, to cause problem. So a virus is an example, Trojan horse, spyware, logic bombs. All these are different types of malware. And then the virus is one of the two most common type of malware, and it usually spreads through emails. It makes use of the system resources, and it slows down the performance of the system, or can even stop performance of that system. And then we have Trojan horse. Okay, it is the other most common type of malware, and this is actually a very dangerous type of malware. Okay, so it is named after the wooden horse of ancient history. That was where the name Trojan horse was gotten from. And then of course we have spyware, which is the most rapidly growing type of malicious software. Okay, and then we have the logic bomb. Okay, so this is a type of code that is intentionally inserted into a software system. Okay, so for example, let's say a programmer inserts a hidden piece of code. Okay, and what this code is meant to do is that it's supposed to start deleting files if those files are ever terminated from the company. So let's say the company no longer need those files and they're terminated. So the purpose or the function of that hidden piece of code by the programmer is that it should start deleting those files. So a logic bomb basically is a piece of code intentionally inserted into a software that sets off a malicious function or attack when specified conditions are met. Okay, and then we will move on to talk about compromising system security. We have intrusions, attacks that break through system resources. So we have hackers, we have crackers, we have social engineering, we have war driving. So hackers